Good morning. We have a dog, and her name is London. If most of you probably have not met her, but some of you, if you've been to the rectory, have heard her, because she's a barker. And we love London. For the last year, while I was basically living alone in the rectory, she was my companion. She was my buddy. It was nice to be able to go home and have something that was smiling at me when I walked in the door. London is a mutt. People ask me all the time, "Oh, what kind of dog do you have?" Oh, we have no idea. She is a mutt, and she was a rescue. There was an organization that rescued pregnant female dogs from Texas, brought them north to have their puppies, and we got London when she was a puppy from one of her mothers from Texas. A few Christmases ago, I forget who it was who gave the gift to who, but someone gave to someone in our family one of those DNA tests for your dog. Has anyone done one of those? A few. Okay. At 8 o'clock, it was nobody. So I'm glad. I should have tried to get a bulk deal for us to be able to do DNA tests on all of our dogs. But we got this DNA test, so we took, I forget, it was a hair or something off of London, and then we sent it off to the company, and then you get an email back saying what she is. And I would have bet everything that she was mostly Siberian Husky, because she looks like a Siberian Husky. And Karen and I, when we were first married, had Siberian Huskies. So we know Siberian Huskies. I look at London, I say, that is a Siberian Husky with a couple of other things mixed in. So we get this email back, and we open it up, the DNA results, and here's what it says. Number 1, at 28%, Great Pyrenees. Number 2, at 27%, Border Collie. Number 3, Australian Cattle Dog. Number 5, German Shepherd. Number 4, Collie. All the way down at the bottom of the list, 2%, Siberian Husky. So she plays a good Siberian Husky. But one of the things we noticed when going through the DNA results, while a little surprising, we noticed that all of the ones that she has the most DNA from, the Pyrenees, the Collie, the Cattle Dog, the Shepherd, they're all working dogs. They're all herding dogs. And London likes to herd. She likes to herd us. She would love to herd our chickens. We also think she'd like to eat the chickens, so we keep them separated. She likes to herd children. She likes to herd cats. So I also had, for the last year, a cat living with my other buddy in the house, was Percy. And every once in a while, I would take Percy out on our back patio, and I would sit Percy on the chair next to me, and he would just enjoy himself looking at the butterflies and the birds and whatnot. But Percy is a cat, and so every once in a while, he would like to get down and explore around. And so he would jump off the chair, and no sooner had his paws touched the patio than London, wherever she was in the backyard, would come running over there and herd her right back on top that chair. It's kind of amazing when you can sort of know what the inner traits are. She's a herding dog. And then see those inner traits come out in real life. Something that's inner that makes its way to the outside. Last Sunday, this Sunday, and next Sunday, our epistle lessons come from Paul's letter to the Galatians. And if you know one thing about Paul's letter to the Galatians, you know that it is his angriest letter. When Paul writes Galatians, Paul is furious. He is incensed. He is irate. Paul had founded the church in Galatia, which is not a town or a village, it's a region. So there's probably several towns or villages that encompass this region of Galatia. He had been there some years prior, he had founded the churches, and then he had moved on to found another church, and another church, and another church. And then he got word that the churches of Galatia had taken in some itinerant, some traveling preachers. If you like sarcasm, you will love Paul's letter to the Galatians, because Paul loves to work out his anger with sarcasm. And so he calls these itinerant preachers, he calls them the super apostles. In the Greek, it's literally hooper apostle, the hyper apostles. Like, they're apostles, but they're hyper about it. And here's what they're hyper about. They came to town, to Galatia, saying, do you guys know Jesus? And the Galatians said, oh yeah, absolutely. And they said, great, you only need one more thing. You just need to be circumcised. Now, we're not talking about circumcising babies on their 8th day when they're not going to remember it. We're talking about circumcising adults with blunt instruments, without modern medicine, right? This is a terrible and frightful thing. But the thing is, the Galatians seem to have latched onto it and said, oh, okay, yes, we'll do that. The Galatians, before being Christians, were of course not Jewish, or they would have already been circumcised, but they were some breed of pagan. And there were many breeds of pagan religion in those days, which included rituals that would have caused great pain, so that they could prove to those around them, and especially prove to their God, how faithful they were and how devoted they were, that they would be willing to go through this pain and show their faith. And so these Galatians, already primed with that from the faith of their childhood, were like, all right, you want us to prove our faith to people around us, to fellow believers, to non-believers, to God himself? Absolutely. Boy, will we have a story to tell you. And Paul is incensed, because when Paul was among them, he told them they don't have to do anything. There is nothing they can do that will make God love them anymore. There's nothing they could do that would make God love them any less. All they need is faith. You don't need faith and a little plastic surgery. You just need faith. Now, part of the reason, I think, why Paul allows himself to get so angry and worked up in this letter is because he knows the Galatians so well. When Paul was in Galatia, Paul had a medical crisis, and we don't know all the details, but it appears to have been something with his eyes. Now, that might ring a bell in your head, because you might remember that he was struck blind on the road to Damascus, and then he had some things that fell like scales from his eyes when he was in Damascus. So he's already got some eye things happening with him. Could this be related to this? Could he have had a long-term eye condition? We don't know. But whatever it is, flared up while he was in Galatia. And the Galatians cared for Paul. Paul came and he brought them the good news of the gospel, and the Galatians in turn cared for him in his deepest hour. And that kind of relationship will bond you. And Paul is bonded to the Galatians, and the Galatians are bonded to Paul, which I think allows him to then be so angry. He's not yelling at strangers. He's talking to people who he loves deeply and who he knows that they know that he loves them deeply. And he is so upset that they seemed to have missed the message that he came to bring them about faith. That they wanted this outward sign to prove to everyone else and to God and maybe even themselves that they were faithful. Paul does concede in this morning's lesson that there actually are some outward signs that don't involve a knife, that don't involve surgery. Paul calls them the fruit of the Spirit. And the fruit of the Spirit are this: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, and self-control. He calls them the fruit of the Spirit. Like an apple tree is going to bear apples, and an orange tree is going to bear oranges. Paul is saying here a Christian is going to bear these traits in their life: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, gentleness, goodness, self-control. Have you ever had the opportunity to know a holy person? And, maybe you've seen one on television, or maybe you've gotten to know one. Maybe it's not like a world-famous holy person. Maybe it's a grandparent or a Sunday school teacher or something like that. Someone that you could just know walked with God. My guess is if you took that person that you're thinking of right now and put them up next to love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control, that there would be a lot of overlap. Because this is what holiness looks like. You could then look at the opposite of these traits. You could turn love, joy, peace, patience, kindness around and turn them into hateful, joyless, belligerent, impatient, unkind. It would be hard to say someone walking around with those traits, oh, they are deeply in their walk with Jesus, right? Of course, those words could also describe every single one of us on our worst day. But those aren't our holy moments. They would also probably describe the disciples in today's gospel lesson who are really miffed that this Samaritan town will not let them and Jesus in to do his teaching. And so they decide the best course of action is that if they were to call fire down from heaven upon the town. If I could go back and watch Jesus in his ministry, this would be one of the moments I would love to see Jesus just go, are you kidding me? All the talk about love and loving your neighbor and loving your enemy and do not judging, and you want to go call fire down from heaven upon these people? Are you kidding me? The disciples, James and John, aren't quite exhibiting the fruits of the Spirit yet. But they will. They will. Notice when Paul describes the fruits of the Spirit, he doesn't say that you will know Christians by our correct doctrine. He doesn't say that you will know Christians by our moral superiority, or we will know each other by our zealousness. He says, the fruit of the Christian life is love and joy and peace. One of the ancient church fathers, writing in the 2nd century, actually writing in the year 197 AD, his name is Tertullian, and he's talking about what the pagans were saying about the Christians. Here's what he wrote in 197. He said, the pagans walked around saying, see how they love one another and how they are ready to die for each other. See how they love one another. What was the fruit of their lives? Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness. They were showing it, and people were seeing it, and people were identifying these Christians by their love. Paul wants to tell the Galatians that these fruits aren't just outward marks, but they come from inside. It is God that is on the inside. It is Jesus that is on the inside. It is the Spirit that is on the inside. And when we have the Father, Son, and the Spirit in us, out of us come the fruits. They're like the traits that then be made known in the real world. But I have to say, and I'll close with this, I do believe that the fruits of the Spirit can be reverse engineered. If you're coming to church at the end of a very hot week, at the beginning of summer, perhaps you're coming wanting a closer walk with God. Perhaps you are coming wanting a deeper spirituality. You're wanting to be closer with Jesus. A place you could start is to love more. A place you could start is to be more joyful. You could seek peace. You could be kind. Be good. Bring faith and gentleness with you. If the fruit of the Spirit are not part of your spiritual DNA yet, it's okay, because you can feast on them. And I have to tell you, if you feast on love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, the people around you will be better for it. And you will be better for it. And you will be closer to the mind and the heart of God. Amen.